it's interesting because I've learned to love golf, and it's, I actually had this like realization last week because I had a tough week in business, and I see the parallels between why business people love golf, because it's about like the ongoing challenge and like really, but we were having a conversation about kind of your background and being in golf. And I can understand when you're kind of told to love something and for that to be your job, it's probably a bigger picture of what we're going to be talking about, that like authenticity is how to win.
It's all mindset and it's all confidence. Yeah. I brand myself on mindset and confidence because I truly believe that we're all just programmed, like we're all like computers. We're programmed in a certain way. And if you can reprogram the stories, patterns, and habits, and you're confident enough, I will pick a confident person who has a better mindset than a person who's like going to the moon because they're a rocket scientist. Like to me, like that is the greatest skill set ever. And that is like what we're talking about today. What I brand myself on is the confidence and the mindset.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's timely as we're recording this is when the Paris Olympics are happening.
Yeah.
And last night I was looking at running, and a part of what is so interesting about professional sports is, especially in the running category, they announce the runner's personal best as a standard of what they're realistically going to beat because they're in a larger group. And sitting there, I'm like, why are they talking about a 15-second delta when they know that they're going to break a 10-second barrier in a 100-meter race? And it's, yes, it's training, yes, it's fitness, but it's also mindset. It's like, who is going show up to that race to push through their physical boundaries when they're professional racers? And we don't think enough about that power of mindset. And I think a lot of why you're seeing a ton of world records being broken and Olympic records being broken is we're really focusing on mindset with athletes. Like, yes, food's gone better, and yes, like, stretching, et cetera. But between the last 5 years, I think the difference is a focus on mentality and mental health and being more mindful in your practice. I think we're going to see later with studying has been a major difference for breaking that difference of barrier of like the 2 seconds, the 5-second deltas.
Oh, for sure. I mean, mindset is like everything. Like people talk about, like, even in business, like they talk about the visualization. I don't know. Have you seen the Serena Williams documentary right now?
No, but I need to.
Okay. So I just watched the first episode. My husband and I watched it this past week, and we watched the first episode, and she talks about, and I don't know, I've only watched the first episode, but she talks about how, I think it was the 1999 US Open. She said it was the craziest experience of her life. She's like, she didn't know if she wanted to call it like a premonition or a manifestation or whatever, but she is like, I literally saw myself in every single solitary match. She's like, at the end of it, when I actually won, I acted excited, but I had visualized it so much that I knew it was going to happen that I could have remained completely calm when she won her first major.
Well, I got an addition to that. Have you read Tim Grover's book, Relentless?
I haven't.
Oh my gosh, I feel like this would just be crack for the brain. But so he has a second book. So Relentless is great. He basically breaks down, he was Michael Jordan's coach.
Yeah, I know who he is. Yeah, I follow him. Yeah.
So his first book, Relentless, is basically kind of explaining the different like archetypes of people who win. And like that, I guess the Michael Jordan, the Serena Williams, like they're just cleaners. Like the way that they just conceptualize and their mentality for winning is different. But the second book, Winning, he just came out with, transformed my life, because it actually makes winning not a moment that's like binary win or lose. It's like it makes it an active concept that keeps your mindset in line with, because like winning isn't just about the win. It's like when you have that, how do you keep being in place? And people ask me all the time, they're like, how do you do this? How do you maintain all these things? And it's like, it's mindset. Like it's not about what you do, it's how you approach doing it. And I think if with you guys both watching this, Serena, I would highly recommend it. Like I read this book in a day and a half. Like it was like,
oh, then I'm going to buy it for sure. Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh, so good. Yeah, I do follow him. I really like him, but I totally agree with you, because I think, when you think about like a Kobe, a Tiger, a Serena or whatever, you always think about it. Like the way that I kind of think about it is like that absolute greatness with that, like never enough. Like it's never, like it's always about the process. It's like there's nothing, like it's just that greatness. It's that something that is just those key. Oh, it's just so inspired. Like, I love it. Like, I don't even care. I do not care about tennis. I do not care about basketball. I'm a more of like an NFL football person, but I love watching those shows. I'm obsessed with watching.
Me too.
Love it.
And what I love too is he kind of redefines winning as like, it's like a gruesome battle. And for me, I think for a lot of people listening to this, like focus on self-improvement and like mindset and setting better benchmarks. Like in some part, it's supposed to suck, but it's reframing that suck to be a part of a greater journey. So it's not looking at winning as like the end goal. Cause like once you get there, then you're like, okay, now what? You know, like it's about reframing what winning means and how you approach winning in life to have a different outlook and aspect on both like the goals and the journey. So it gets, I just can't say enough about this book, Transform Me.
Oh, cool. Well, we'll definitely link it in the show notes or whatever. So how did you get into branding? Obviously, like the audience doesn't even know how fabulous you are, what you do, but like, how did you get into it? So if you guys, welcome, this is Camille. She is the brand director. She's like the internet guru for fucking branding. She's amazing. I'm so like, I was selfishly thinking about this podcast today. I was like, this is going to be the greatest podcast ever. Even if no one listens to it, I feel like I've gotten like literally the greatest person on the planet to talk about branding. And I want to know all the fucking things.
Oh man, like I don't even know where to start. So hi. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's in and of itself, it's a whole thing. The long and the short of it is I grew up in a lower income home. I really, I usually colloquially say poor, but I think what was really awesome about growing up is like I never knew I was poor until really I got to high school. And then I was like, and then it became like just comparing yourself to other people. And it was like loss aversion of like, hey, I don't have that. I never had that. That makes me poor. But I grew up in a family that worked very hard to give me the most they could. And for me, never felt like I went without. But when I went to high school and then later on to secondary school, I became very aware and embarrassed about where I came from. And with that, I started to turn to brands. And brands became the way that I could mask to the outside world how I wanted to be perceived. And it took me many years to really realize, like I've been studying branding really since I was in high school, because that was the moment I went to a high school that was outside of, it took me an hour and 20 minutes to get to. I'm from Toronto. I grew up in Scarborough. For those who are listening, it's kind of not the best neighborhood. And it really, I basically went to a totally different area and zip code where it was a different socioeconomic background and nobody knew who I was. And it was really a way to reinvent myself. So I had gotten a job at 14. McDonald's was my first job. And the reason why I got this job was to buy a bench jacket. And because I had asked my parents when I had seen girls wearing these bench jackets, if I could have a bench jacket, my parents, very politely are like, are you on crack? Like, we're not buying you $180 jacket that's neon turquoise in April. Like, wait till your birthday or get yourself a job. And I was like, fine, I'm going to go get myself a job. So I worked and my first paycheck was for a bench jacket. And that was kind of the birth of the brand for me. And then as I went on to university, I didn't even really realize or become aware of it, but I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to kind of change my background. I wanted to be like the first one to be successful and rich. And I had studied a bunch of my friends in high school, parents that were successful. And I became obsessed with learning how to become what I wanted to get. And one of my favorite quotes from Tony Robbins is that like success leaves clues. And like I was very aware of that at a young age. I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this? So when I went to Western University in Ontario, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I think this was, Legally Blonde had kind of come out a year or two before. I'm like, that's I'm going to be her. Suits, had come out when I was later in high school, and like they really glorified the profession. I'm like, I can speak a lot. I'm a great arguer. I'm like resonating with Mike Ross. I'm like, this is it. I'm going to be a lawyer. So, but I couldn't afford to go to law school on my own. I paid for myself to go to university. I worked a bunch of jobs when I was in my undergrad. Serving was one of them. And this law firm that I worked at, that I was interning for, I realized very quickly that I hated it. And I started kind of doing some marketing at the front desk. This was 10 years ago. I'd learned at a comp sci course in school, like Photoshop, and I redid his logo. I hated his logo. I started designing graphics and it started working. And this is before people were really advertising on Facebook. And he was, however old he was, 40 years or 45 years. He's like, I think you're onto something. He's like, I think you should get into marketing. Forget law. You're so good at this. You understand all of these things. He's like, let me just help you incorporate this business. I'll introduce you to some other people I'm connected with in town, and you can start doing this for money. And I was working an unpaid internship to figure out if I liked the law. And I thought I was rich. I was waitressing, and I said I'd get paid like $500 to design, a month of graphics. And it would take me like 4 hours to do. And I was like chucking out these businesses in my undergrad. I started like hiring my friends, and it slowly became an agency. And I kind of, the kind of speed this up a bit faster, the agency ended up doing really well. I had a few friends employed. I ended up getting offered a job in cannabis. There was a really interesting transition in Canada, as you'll remember, we went Fed legal. And when we went federally legal, we were the first G8 country to do that. No one that was established in marketing wanted to be a CMO for a weed company. Like, it was super taboo. So I was right place, right time. That lawyer I was working for, he had, there's some nuance to this. Like, it was, before it was a medical license in Canada, and then medical went publicly recreational. So he had an LP, which is how you grew it. The way that Canada did it is that it became a DIN, which is like a registered number as like a drug, like when you get a drug at a drugstore. So I was right place, right time. I got hired by a California company to be a director of marketing for Canadian operations. I got to work with the Liberal government, who was making it federally legal. And I was the youngest person in the room by like 30 years. And, but like nobody wanted to come over to cannabis. So I was like 20 something years old, young 20s. I had a team of like a whole team. I was managing the full marketing of this company. And then slowly it became the Wild West, like everyone from Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and they all started coming over because cannabis became the new big thing. And, so I got a ton of responsibility. I got to work in a highly regulated industry. And I was kind of like early.com. I was just right place, right time. And I had this agency running it on the side, and that worked really well. And basically, I came to a crossroads where I was faced. There was, a hostile board takeover, and some drama happened in the company, and it was repurchased. And they didn't know, the new owners, that I had this agency on the side. And I had to come to terms with, am I going to keep running a business, or am I going to keep a really good salary job? And I decided the agency, and I went over to the agency, and everything seemed good. And then COVID hit, and then I had a heart attack. And because I'd never seen that, no one in my life had ever seen this before. And while everybody my age was vacationing and not doing anything, I buckled down and I read 4 books a week. I went to university for English, so I learned how to read at a crazy rate. And I said, I'm not going to fail. My biggest fear is to go back where I came from. And I said, I'm not going to do it. So I outread almost every expert on the internet. I've read an insane amount of content. And then I started creating content a few years in, and here we are.
And now she is the internet's brand director. And I was so excited. So, it's interesting. I'm a person of faith. God's, I'm a person of faith, but I feel like everything always like works out as it should. And my assistant was like, Christina, this girl is so good. She's so cute. You need to like follow her. And so I started following you, and I was listening to your podcast. And I think the first one I listened to was maybe the one that you did on Buc-ee's.
Okay.
Oh my God, this girl is so smart. And then I found out that you were on the His and Her podcast, which I'm a new His and Her podcast listener, because one of my clients, she's like,
love her.
How the fuck do you not know this person? I was like, well, I guess I live in a freaking bubble. I have no idea.
Under a rock.
Under a rock, because she's so huge. So how did you get on the His and Her podcast? How did that happen?
She slid into my Instagrams. Like literally this is like the reason why I gave the long intro is like, my dad isn't somebody. Like nobody helped me. Like I don't know people in LA. There isn't some, like it just came down to doing the work and creating content. And it was really uncomfortable to create content. And my whole platform is like, if I can help 3 other small businesses every time they listen to me to feel like they can do it too, like I feel like I can go to bed and sleep at night successfully, because the people who are the best at what they do are the worst at marketing themselves. And it's so hard in my profession because I want to help everybody, but there's just a cap to who I can help. And it breaks my heart when I sit down with people one-on-one and I'm like, you are so good at what you do. How are you not putting this on a platform so that more people can hear you? And like, that's what's so crazy is I don't even know the moment that we connected, but like, I'm so happy that we did. Because my life is now better, bigger, and more exposed to better people because my network is expanding every day. So that's how. And every big opportunity that is still unfolding and is going to be coming out is literally because I created content and they DM me or they sent me a message on my email. That's it.
I love that you said that because I'm much older than you. I'm looking at you. I'm like, how old are you? Are you 30?
Not quite.
Not quite. I knew it. Fuck, you're got perfect skin. You cute young person, you.
Thanks much.
Fabulous. I love it. No, but like I've been talking about this for such a long period of time where I just truly believe from the bottom of my soul, if you have a passion to do something, I call it like a purpose inside of your soul. Like I believe every one of us, as a Christian, I just believe that every one of us was given this God-given purpose. And I have talked to people, hundreds, just like yourself, like you're much more, prominent than I am, but I've talked to so many people over the years who are just like, they doubt themselves and they don't take action and they're not doing it. And it just breaks my soul apart because I'm like, no, you do not understand. Like you do not fucking understand. I promise you, if you just had the confidence, you changed your mindset and you took action, you will be, no matter where you want to go, you will be closer to that than if you stay here. There is 100% guarantee that you will not get closer to what you want if you stay where you're at. And it breaks my heart too. And I'm a big proponent is that if you are taking action, you will get closer to something.
Yeah, no, but even more than that, it's like, okay, you listen to that great STEM speech and you accept it. And then the next thing that I want you to accept is that it's going to suck, and it's going 100%. To suck longer than you're prepared for it to suck, because it's not like you put out 3 episodes or 3 pieces of content and the internet owes you something. Like the whole point of why it's worth doing is because it's difficult and other people will not do it for that reason. Like the thing that's the best is like, you can literally go back to like I need to actually properly date stamp this, because like I don't know if it's 2 years or 3 years at this point, but like you can go back and see the first videos that I put out, and it is so embarrassing, and it would be way more convenient for me to take it down, but like I don't care. I want you to see the growth. Like I didn't come out of TV school being able to speak. Like it took a whole bunch of staring at a camera and being like, like you go through and you do a video and it sucks and you get it back from your video team. Like the first video that went viral for me is the video that I hated the most. Like I
heard you talk about this on maybe a social post or something that you did. You're like, my hair was slicked back and like
it was my father.
In New York.
Yes. Yeah, it was literally my father. Like I looked like my father with makeup on, and I couldn't even hear what it said. I was like, no chance. Especially too in the beginning months, it's like only the chicks that hate you the most, from past jobs and universities that are sending to each other and snickering. And like as a woman, you're like, I'd rather die than give ammunition for people to judge you. And I hated it. And had my partner not said to the team, post it, I probably wouldn't be here. So it's like we hold ourselves back in so many ways. So like once you get over the like, okay, I'm going to create a content, the next piece of content you create shouldn't be a full face of makeup, your hair perfect, like be you and accept that it's going to take time for them to get to know you. Like that's it.
Yeah, it's interesting. My social media handle is B Christina because I bought this from some chick in like Sweden for like $600, like probably 4 or 5 years ago, because I used to be Golf Christina, and losing my golf identity was
cool.
It was the big shift for me, right? It was like, wait a minute, I can still be Golf Christina, I can be wife Christina, I can be coach Christina, I can be girlfriend Christina, but like my ultimate job is to be Christina, because I believe that I was given this by God. Like, I believe, like, to my core that I was like given this gift to be Christina. And if I'm not living that out fully, then like, what the fuck? But yes, I said God and fuck in the same sentence. But that is just so authentically me. But I totally agree with what you're saying. One of the things that you said, and one of the reasons why I started really resonating with you, obviously your content is fantastic. You guys, Art of the Brand podcast, it's so good. I love your little snips with your part. Is that your Philip? Is that your business partner? Or?
Yeah, he's my partner, but he's in the office. He'll probably stop by.
Partner. Hey, yeah. I love it. Amazing. You guys do such a great pod. Like, you guys have to listen. It's so damn good. And I've started following you through your podcast before I started following you on Instagram. I know you're huge over on TikTok. I'm not a big TikToker, but all of that to be said, I think your content is so fantastic because no matter where you are in business, whether you are in a big corporation or you're a solo entrepreneur, you can always get something from it. And just I love how you guys constantly give really tangible examples, like everything from Buc-ee's to Chick-fil-A to the J-Lo podcast you guys did when you were talking about why she's kind of failing right now and how she hasn't reinvented herself. I just think it's absolutely brilliant and more people need to listen to it.
I got a point on the J-Lo podcast because I think another thing that I hear a lot is, it's really crippling to say something interesting online. And the reality is, if you're not prepared to say something interesting, and I want to go so far as to say controversial, the content won't work. And the problem with the word controversial is like you instantly go to like sex or politics or like religion. You go to something that like is kind of said like, don't talk about this, or like it's negative. The problem with actually what controversial represents on the internet is saying something that somebody can disagree with. So saying like, I did a video on Apple and they had these billboards and the billboards were like Newphoria. And to me, I thought that was a bad move by Apple because Apple, like, I don't think Apple's message should be trying to push people to buy new. Like Apple should be more of like it's a classic brand. Like you can trust us when you're spending thousands of dollars that you're not needing to go and buy the new product every year. And I think a lot of us are getting sick of Apple pushing new products constantly with how much money they cost. Like there's no longevity. So I done this video on this and that video was controversial. Like if you look, there's thousands of comments, but nobody's talking to me. They're only they're fighting each other. It's Team Apple. It's Team Samsung. It's what are you talking about? Apple's never going to die. What are you talking about? We're all Samsung. Like they're not really chatting with me. So controversy in that aspect is just like talking about these cult brands that somebody else can disagree with is controversial. Now on the J-Lo piece, what's interesting is that was one where I was like, I don't know how this is going to fly. A part of me was like, ragging on a woman on the internet is interesting territory. And I created the piece of content and I basically decided to put it out there and see. I believed in my perspective. I don't believe in tearing down women. Like that's kind of it.
And just so you know, I don't think you tore her down at all. I think it was really positive way of looking at it, being like, oh, you know what? You're right. We just think of her as Jenny from the block 1,000 years ago, and she hasn't aged. Like, I am a lot closer to her age than you are. And like, I get it. Like, I wouldn't buy her freaking shit either because there's no way in hell that the bitch isn't doing all the things that I'm trying.
She's not using it. No, but my point of it was I was nervous to put it out. And even that really performed. So it shows you the extremity of what paralyzes you to not create content because you think that the world is going to cancel you is actually a pretty far extreme. Like, and that's what's so interesting about like the Lauren Bostic, the his and her, like these personalities, like we just authenticity. Like we're so sick of like if you're not prepared to say something, it's just there's too much of it. Like you got to say something, but don't be paralyzed that you're going to be canceled. Like there's space for your opinion. We're hungry for an opinion. And based off of what you just said was like, I wish more women would hear that because like I'm comfortable to say it, but like even I kind of second guess it and I did it anyways. And the feedback was extremely positive.
It's so interesting that, and maybe it's like my mindset or maybe my confidence or maybe my age or whatever it is, but like, there really isn't much that I'm afraid to say. Like, I am more than willing to say that, like, I I say God, I say fuck. I'm more than willing to say that. Like, I have a very traditional marriage. Like I make my husband's lunch and dinner and all of the things, and I have the greatest fucking marriage ever. And like, but even that was like a very controversial video that I was like, oh, let's ruffle a few feathers. And yep, I am a traditional wife. But I think saying those kind of things allows a person to resonate with you.
Totally. Or just have a conversation. But I also think that's why people connect with you and why you have a platform is like, you're prepared to be you. And like, it's actually harder to be you on the internet than it is to be a polished version of yourself. And I think that's another takeaway too, is truly being yourself is difficult. And I think the reason why the JLo episode did so well is I had done my homework. It was coming from a place of authenticity. I really felt that way. And I feel like there's space for JLo to have a great brand. I was having a conversation with a big podcast an hour ago, and we were talking about Carrie Underwood. And like, it's such a great comparison for me to do a video on Carrie Underwood where there's not a shelf life for her personality versus what JLo has. And I think it comes also from a time too of what we expected from pop stars in that era, like even the Britney Spears, the JLos, like, anyways, so much. But like, I think the takeaway is being you is harder to be you online.
So how would you reference that to, right, that's a personal brand. And I definitely want to talk more so the personal brand, because I believe a lot of my audience is very much like, less than 100 employees, solo entrepreneur, mindset strategy, deciding it's your turn, all the things. But also too, how does that apply to a bigger brand, like a bigger company? How does a company add a personal take to really accelerate their brand?
Well, that's an interesting question, because the big brands that became established without a Facebook connection are having to be quite strategic. Like it's a really intentional direction they're taking, because the algorithms can't push their content anymore. Like that's just it. The reality is like we buy from people. We don't buy from faceless businesses. And personal brands and like an extension of a business isn't new. Like Steve Jobs got it with Apple, Elon and Tesla. Like it's not like it's a new thing of like 2024 or 2025. It's just that the way that the algorithm works, and this is an interesting kind of step to take back for those considering or at least being open to listening to me talk about a personal brand, is that all the algorithm or all the social media platform cares about is keeping your attention. So the longer that you're on Instagram, the less time you're on TikTok or on YouTube or anywhere else. And the name of the game for these social media platforms is selling more ads. So to sell more ads, they have to keep more attention. And by keeping more attention, they have to provide better content. And what they found is that, so a few years back, there was a massive lawsuit. It was actually against Lord & Taylor is the first one. And the FCP, the US has created a bunch of different laws to protect consumers. And marketing and advertising has been evolving since the 80s, but they had updated the rules in order to protect consumers who are buying content off of social media, because it was a new medium. So like in the 80s and 90s, the biggest thing was like cracking down on making sure testimonials were like accurate, so that they weren't saying doctors recommend this, like no doctors are recommending it. So the next evolution was with social media and like basically enforcing influencers to say that they're being paid to post something, because that's against consumer trust. So Lord & Taylor was kind of the first big lawsuit that got like really the big slap. And that's when you started to see in the last like 5 years, influencers having to say like #paid or #ad. Now, it got to the point where influencers wanting to make money were almost selling out every single post. So many of the influencers that you love that it just became like a constant ad roll. And we stopped looking, we stopped following, we stopped engaging. And it got to the point where the algorithm is like, regardless of how much eyeballs these influencers bring, if we're losing attention, we have to penalize them. And what happened is, the content that was ad-based stopped working. So what you started to see was the evolution of like brands like Array and Summer Fridays, Road, where it was coming out of influencers that had strong followings that weren't as purchasable. Like, yes, there was space for like influencer partnerships, but Mariana Hewitt creates great content. So for her launching a product, it made sense. So where I'm going with this is, the name of the game in today is having a face or an educator attached to the brand. And you've seen Instagram even change its updates, like introducing the collaborator feature. So collaborator feature allows me, Camille Moore, who produces educational content, to collaborate with my 2 agencies so that if you're interested, you know that this is coming from a place of expertise where I'm actually like being hired by people to do this. So none of my content sells the agency. I don't push the agency. I don't even talk about the agency. But if you wanted to hire me, you know that it's at least I'm not, deciding to do this for fun on a Thursday. Like this is what I do for my job. So that's, I guess, probably a bit long-winded for what you were looking for, but like it's been an evolution because of the algorithm that's really forcing it. And you're seeing brands like even On Cloud is a perfect example, or Chipotle. Like these are big brands that like don't have a founder that's a face for the company. And if you analyze their socials, they're highly focused on community building and like looking, like having people represent the brand. So OnCloud's been paying creators to basically like just go on runs, like wearing their gear. And like the runners like don't even talk about like On Cloud. Like they'll just go on a run every day and they put their new shoes on and they lace it up. And On Cloud is a part of the experience, but it's not the old school of like, come get ready with me. I'm putting on my On Cloud shoes and these are the SF6s that are sold in JCPenney's. And like, it's not the same approach that we saw before. Like it's really ambient to the content, and it's because it's what we want. And that's why TikTok blew up. TikTok blew up because it wasn't these hyper filtered, overposed, edited photos. It was like raw people doing like talking about their Stanley cups in their bathrooms. Like it was raw stuff. And like, we love that because we're so sick of being sold to. So in order to really kill it, you need to showcase your expertise by being a person, because like there's a limit into which we're interested, or the algorithm will push your business if there isn't.
Love it. So if you are a personal brand, you're selling something, whatever it is, you own a small business, you're trying to sell something. What are like steps 1 and 2? Because over the years, every single person has ever come to me for business stuff are like, but I have to have a logo and a website. And I have always said, listen, you can have a website that cures cancer, but if no one knows the fucking website's there, you're not curing any cancer. So let's save your cash there, girl.
Point.
Right? I'm like, everyone wants this logo and this website, but I'm like, if no one knows the website exists, you will sell nothing. So let's focus in on actually getting yourself out there. I'm not the brand person, but I'm the mindset of actually getting out there and the confidence to actually sell and the confidence to actually do things. So my question to you is like, if I am like, let's say under a year, baby business, new to, putting my content out, what are the first 2 to 3 things we need to think about?
Okay. So
get your pens, people. Let's go.
Well, so the way that I like to start it is that there isn't a one size fits all. And I think that we don't talk about that. So much content on the internet is like, I grew to 0 to 1 million followers in 3 weeks. Here's how. And I think what a lot of people miss is that the point of creating content and building socials is to invest in a brand. And we get so hyper fixated on ROI, which is like your return on investment, or like how much are things going to cost. And it doesn't allow you to have a proper expectation for what you're investing in. So the reason I like to start there is like, if you're a aspiring business coach, that's a very different starting place than if you're wanting to launch a luxury purse line, and so if you're one person, you're investing in a luxury purse line, well, you're going to have to have different things to signal that you're luxury, that an independent solopreneur business coach isn't going to have to invest in. So it's really understanding, what are your goals? What are you looking to achieve? And how are you going to define success? And based on that, if it's a solopreneur and you're wanting to test it out and you're building it out, your iPhone and a mic you can get on Amazon and CapCut are all you need. Like even CapCut you can just do it right on the TikTok app. So it's not about me saying, you need to do this, this, and this. It's like, you really need to have a clear plan and a clear strategy. And based off of that, also do your research. So I'd say number 1 is, we don't study social media, we consume it. And if you're starting out, you need to develop a strategy, which is number 1. But in developing a strategy, you need to do research. And yes, you should look at your industry and your competitors. but a lot of you will be in industries where looking at your industry is limiting. And this is like medical spa owners. This is any kind of like medical profession, a lot of professional service providers. Like if you're a lawyer and you look at other lawyers' Instagrams, you're going to see more of the same and more of the same shit. So like it's good to have an understanding of what that looks like, but I also recommend researching just the content you gravitate towards, what feels authentic, what do you like about the content, what do you dislike about content that you don't resonate with, and start to create a strategy and a plan. So that's kind of the first place. The second place is defining what you need in order to reach your goals. So it may be a logo, it may be a website, but to your point, Christina, you're right. It's like, the thing that's tough on branding, it's like, these brands come in and they're like, okay, what do I do? I'm like, well, your positioning is horrible. Your logo looks like shit. And your website is 10 years old. Like, what is the plan? And they spend all this money and they don't understand that it's like the starting point, because they're like, okay, this new website is online. Where is the business? And I'm like, well, people aren't rushing in because like you changed your website. Like, what's the next step? So that's why starting with a plan is best. Understanding what you need is second. There's so many resources like Squarespace you can build yourself. You can do even like link in bios or link trees that just allow to book a consult. You can do things like Calendly where they can pay you direct. Like you need to figure out based off of what you're looking to achieve in your position, what you require in order to get there. And then third is you need to create content and you need to do it consistently. So I always get asked, how many times per week do I have to post? Well, where I disagree with the how many times per week do you have to post is that then the content becomes shitty and it's not quality. So you have to focus on quality over quantity. So if you're a mom of three and you're like, hey, I'm this business, I can maybe justify doing an afternoon once a week or every 2 weeks to shoot content. Well, then your goal is to create 2 great pieces of content per week. And I'd rather be 2 great than 5 that are junk, because again, the algorithm is focused on how are people responding to your message? What engagement are you receiving? How long are people staying on the video? And that's what's going to help you grow. So in my own journey, I started posting 2 to 3 times a week in the beginning. Took 8 months to get the first viral video. And I did have a team that I paid to come in. They weren't my full time. I hired a local team to come in. But my business also at a different place. I could also budget to afford it. But regardless of that, it took me time to get to posting every day. And it's a journey, and we don't talk enough about it being a journey. So that's kind of would be I hope that helps. I know it's probably not as
it helps so much, because the 2 things that you said that I believe to be so true is, number one, you've mentioned it before, and that's one of the reasons why I resonated with you as well, was you're very much a long game. I will never be the person. I would rather go broke and homeless and quit doing this if I'm going to promise someone that they're going to get this like transformation in 30 days. I don't believe that exists. And that's just so slimy to me. I'm like, ugh, so gross. Unfortunately, people spend billions of dollars on it each year. If it existed, guys, like everyone would fucking do it. It does not work. So save your money.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that you said is consistency. I mean, I really feel like I'm not that good at anything. I will just out consistent, and I'm more competitive than most people. And I'm just willing to show up so consistently that I think that eventually consistency and long game, if you keep taking action, you'll figure out what works and what doesn't, and you'll start, catching your stride. But you can't do that if you're always starting and stopping and pivoting. And, you just have to put in the time.
Well, and that's a great point too, is I find on kind of when you're in a different point. So often like what will get you here is won't get you there, and business owners will get successful and then they're ready to outsource their marketing. And then they're just looking for like quick hits. And then they're just agency shopping because like they're just nothing works as fast. And then they're constantly changing strategies. And to me, it's a massive red flag. Like in the hundreds of brands that I've analyzed, the number one variable in order to achieve branding greatness is time. And like, we don't talk enough about time, like because our time on earth is so short, we can't understand how long it takes in order to achieve a brand like Apple or like even like Trader Joe's. Like people don't know that Trader Joe's was started in the 60s. Even UGG, like I interviewed the founder of UGG. It's a great story and a great podcast. His book is called The Birth of the Brand. Highly recommend it. but like UGG was started in the 80s. And like most people don't know that it was in 1981. The first 10 years, the brand was like nobody knew it outside of California. And it took a long time. Like basically the moment that Brian Smith, the founder of UGG, exited it was like the moment that like UGG was really like introduced to the world. And at that point, he'd worked for the brand for 18 years. Like it was like, it's an insane story that like it takes time. And like we don't talk enough about time. So like set reasonable goals. If you want to be seen as the best X on the internet, sure as shit doesn't happen in 6 months. Like be prepared. Like if you want to be the best at something, it takes a lifetime of like, it just takes time. Like you have to be prepared for it to take time. And if you're not, the world is going to eat you up and spit you out because like there's
a really good quote that's like you overestimate what you can do in a year and underestimate what you can do in 10. And I do believe that to be true. You know, my husband's quite successful in business, and he talks about the business flywheel, that getting that wheel to start turning in the beginning, like whether it's the first 2 to 3 years in business or whatever it is, it's a slow turn. But eventually in 10 years, 20 years, that wheel is going faster and the momentum is going faster and your lessons are going faster and your confidence is going faster. It just takes time. And unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, we live in a world where, you know, if it's not happening in 2 seconds, we think that we're doing it wrong. You know, that's something I've heard over the years. Yep. Is that I must be doing it wrong. There's something wrong with me. I must be doing it wrong. It's like, no, you just have posted 3 times in 6 months. Like you're not doing it wrong. You're just not doing it.
Or you also blame the people you're working with, you know, like they must be doing something wrong or they're not the right team. And that's why like I talk about my journey so candidly is if it had been like, if I was in a position where like it wasn't my team, it wasn't my agency and I was paying somebody else and like the retainer fee was coming in every month. Because even when the first video went viral at 8 months, like I thought like it went crazy. Like I got 1 million views in a weekend and it was the first time I'd ever seen virality like for myself. And I expected like the phones to be ringing off the hook. And I can't remember, but like it was being abysmal. Like 4 people reached out. But what it did for me is it started the momentum. So like to your point, the flywheel, like it connected my name and face with something that I was trying to represent, which was branding. And it took videos after that video where people were like, oh, there's that chick. What does she got to say? Oh, that's interesting. I like her. I'm going to follow her. And that's the reason I say it is like, if it had been up to the 8 months, 1, I probably would have fired the agency. And then 2, after that viral video hit where they're like, look, we got one. Like, look at how well it did. If I was looking at ROI alone, like I would have been like, I can't justify this. Like, you know, I get 1 million views and like the paychecks aren't coming in. But the problem is, if I hadn't have kept going, I wouldn't have realized the opportunity cost of what was ahead of me. And like, I still go through this. Like I did a trip to Korea. And the trip to Korea was a risk. You know, like I spoke with Phil about it and I was like, look, like I work with a lot of medical spas. I really love the beauty industry. I'm very passionate about it. And I look, Korea is a center point for innovation and technology. Like, I really think that that's where I need to be in order to be better at what I do. And I'm like, I'm going to propose we go for a 5-day trip. I'm going to like reach out for some brands and just like see what I can make of it. And he's like, are you crazy? He's like, you want to go to Korea for 5 days? He's like, in the middle of winter? He's like, what's the plan? He goes like, there's no plan for this. He goes, you're just spending money. And I'm like, no, like, I really feel like this is the right thing to do. And the content did well, you know, like I got a lot of really great feedback, you know, it gave range to my content so that it wasn't like, you know, always in the podcast room. But it took, when I was in Hawaii, I haven't said this on camera. When I was in Hawaii 2 months ago, so this was last winter, so almost a full year had passed. And I got a DM and it was from Cosmopolitan. And they asked if they could interview me on the future of beauty and branding because they see me as an expert in beauty. And I got to do a full feature interview to a magazine that I read for, you know, my teenage years. And it was because of that trip to Cosmo. Like, on paper, what is that worth? like, what is that interview worth? Yes, I may get business, yes, something may have come out of Korea, but when you look at the grand scheme of my life and the things that I will be able to say that I did, like the money is nice, the money is there, but like these asymmetric opportunities that change your positioning are based off of things that you can't quantify by money alone right away. And it took almost a year to realize, and that the whole office, and I'm now doing feature contributions, and I'm negotiating some other big things with them. But that wouldn't have been possible if I didn't take a risk. So my leading point to this is like, you can't measure things in a quarter. You can't measure things in a day, and you don't even know when things are going to work or when they're going to work. But if you're doing things that are different and you're investing in your future, like what's the downside?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah, it's interesting. I think some of my most successful clients, people that have stayed with me, working with me for years, they're the people that go, okay, well, I'm just going to do this. And like, we're just going to see how much better we can get. And I love having the support and like working on the mindset and all the things, but we're just going to do this. And like, it's okay if like today it doesn't feel like, you know what I mean? Like it just, you're willing to, my team knows, my assistant, I've always said, if you think that at long game, this is the best strategy, 100% we're going to spend money on it. Like, you don't have to prove to me that tomorrow it's going to, give us a 2 times or a 10 times or 100 times ROI. We're just going to do this because this is the best thing that we need to do now for a long game strategy. I love that mindset. Oh my God, it's so fucking good. It's so good. I'm so grateful that you did this. I know that we started with golf and we went everywhere. Obviously,
the best conversations.
Always. It's the way that I do it. I'm just so grateful. It's so nice when you get to connect with someone on the internet that is like, it feels like you've really got your shit together. And it just feels like you love what you get to do. You're making an impact in this world. And what's the goal for you? What's the longevity for you? Because I love getting to follow you. I love the podcast. You give so much great value. There's no doubt in my mind that you won't be, on the cover of Cosmo at some point in time. But what's the goal for you? What do you want to do?
I want to just have a life that I'm proud of. Like there's no brand I want to work with. Like I truly want to leave a legacy and like change the world. And that's all. Like, I just want to provide as much value, insight, and information from like my own learnings and through the eyes of like how I'm seeing the world. And like the rest is like just an added benefit. I truly have no mandate or agenda.
Isn't that the best? That is literally, do you listen to Abraham Hicks by chance?
No. I've never even heard of him.
Here's the kicker. It's a girl.
Abraham Hicks. Interesting.
Abraham Hicks, she's been around for like 50 years. I've seen her in person and it's kind of weird. She's a woman who channels. I know this sounds really weird, but you got to promise me you'll listen to at least 1 or 2. She channels someone called Abraham. And I believe it's kind of like channeling God, but she believes it's kind of like the law of attraction. Like when you are in such an unbelievable state of gratitude, just so grateful for everything that is, that's how you attract everything that you want. And we as humans always are thinking about the things that we want. And yet, if we can always just be in a state of constant gratitude, of like just knowing and expecting, and that is like, I literally feel like that's one of my secrets to like life and business. I believe I have one of the greatest lives ever because I'm just constantly like, the minute I get stressed out, overwhelmed, worried, whatever, I come back to like, oh my God, I'm just so grateful for this. So grateful for this. I'm expecting this to happen. Everything works out for me. That's like one of my lines is that everything works out for me. No matter what the situation, everything, I can find a way for it is working out for me. But from what you said right there is you stay in that state forever. And oh my God, the attraction is going to be so, so good.
That's literally all I ask for my birthday every year is like when I blow out my candles, I just want to be happy for another year. That's all I can ask for is like happiness. Cause I feel like that is like truly the only thing you can't buy and like the greatest thing to have. And like, I'd recommend to listen to this video by Jocko Willink, and it's called Good.
Yeah.
And because my happiness doesn't come from everything being good. It comes from changing my mindset when things happen that are tough to being like moments for growth. So, when you're top employee like quits. Good. You know, it was time to restructure. It was time to kind of relook at the business. When your accountant, you know, misses HST and you owe a ton of money to the, like, good, you know, like there's you need to have a better attention on your finances. And there's as long as you're living, you're breathing, and you're still here, there's like something to learn from it and a good lesson learned that will help you be a better person. And that is true happiness, is like not expecting everything to be perfect, but just accepting that there is a bigger plan and a better way through whatever is being thrown at you.
100%. Gary Vee had a quote the other day or on a video or something. I love him. And he goes, every single day when I get on my phone and I see that my family is healthy and my family is happy, there's nothing, like, we're all good. Like, as long as those two things are good, like everything else is just gravy. So tell everyone where they can follow you, find you, all of the fun things.
My handle is, okay, so there's a lot of fake accounts on TikTok. So I should probably I know, and Fake Me is killing it. Like, she's got and she's scamming people.
I hope I'm not following the wrong one. That Fake Me has like 100. The one I'm following has like 100,000 followers, 1 million views. Is that you?
Me. Okay. Yeah, but Fake Me also has millions of views. I know, it's crazy. I don't even know. TikTok doesn't allow you to report them. So Real Me is Camille.Moore _ on TikTok. And then that's Real Me on Instagram. That's Real Me. But Fake Me looks just like Real Me. And then Real Me on Instagram is just Camille Moore. But you can find me on Instagram and on TikTok. You can always reach out to me. I try to respond. I respond to all my DMs myself. I'm in your corner. If there's anything that you've got a question on or you brand a breakdown, I live to do this stuff. So send it my way. And there will be a book coming out sometime next year. So I also hope that the crew can support, because it's
100%. I will be promoting it, and maybe we'll do another if you have time that allows, we'll do another one. How do people work with you? Tell us that.
So I own 2 agencies. Thought Leader Labs is focused on branding and strategy, which is where we do like rebrands, or we do like kind of strategic one-on-ones. I work with businesses of all size. In fact, I work with the big brands, but like, I don't love it. I much prefer to work with actually the small and medium-sized business owners, because really it's not about money. It's about joy of life. And I love learning what I've learned in the huge boardrooms of big brands and like bringing it to smaller businesses. So as of the current moment, I make space for all. It really just comes down to like a fit. You'd have to meet my team first, because I only have so many hours in the day. But that's kind of on the TEI side. And then Thought Leader Labs is a social media agency. We're focused on building thought leaders. And that is, both are really great products, but also like, you know, if you want to work with me, like, that's secondary. I give everything away online. I shot a full course today that will be live, a social media course. And if money is ever an issue, I comp everything for free. I want to give as much value away. So don't be hesitant to reach out. Same thing probably with the books. I'll give away free books too. So my goal is to give, it's not to take. So wherever we meet at whether this recording or the next, know that that's my mandate for life. So,
oh my God, I love it. You guys, please go follow the real accounts right now. Be sure to share this, tag us in it. And thank you guys so much for listening. Don't forget, you too can always decide it is your turn at any moment in time. Thanks, girl.
Awesome. Thank you.